Hi, folks, welcome to another episode of Who Said What. I'm your host Krishna, and for those of you who are new here, let me quickly set up some context for what this show is about. See, the idea is that we'll pick the most interesting and juiciest comments from business leaders, fund managers, and the likes and contextualize things around them. Now, some of these names might not be familiar, but trust me, they're influential people, and what they say matters a lot because of their experience and background. So I'll make sure to bring a mix. Some names you'll know, some you'll discover, and hopefully it will give you a wide and useful perspective. With that out of the way, let me get started. See, you must have noticed by now that protein is everywhere. Every FMCG ad, every supermarket shelf, every delivery app, protein, protein, protein. 5 years ago, this wasn't the case at all. Back then, protein was just a big weight up. Today, it's high protein paneer, high protein curd, yogurt, and whatnot. In fact, ITC just launched a protein atta. McDonald's is doing protein cheese slices. And Amul, they've gone as far as protein kulfi. A kulfi. Clearly, the protein wave is here. Now, I came across an interview of Amul's MD, Dr. Jayan Mehta, on NDTV Profit, and here's what he said.
By March,
doubling the capacity for
manufacturing of high quality whey protein products, double almost every alternate month. And by March, our capacity this year will be actually 6 to 7 times more than what was in the beginning of the year.
And he didn't stop there.
This is again just the beginning, because in terms of demand, we just at the tip of the iceberg. Though there are more than 2 million active users for our app, and we are selling right now only online through our own direct-to-consumer channel. But the market is much, much bigger, and everyone, we believe, is a high-protein consumer.
6 to 7 times more capacity. 2 million app users already. This seems massive. Why now though? See, two threads tie together here. One is supply. After the monsoon, milk supply in India shoots up. Farmers and cooperatives like Amul end up collecting far more milk than households can drink fresh. Traditionally, that extra was parked in storable products like butter, ghee, skimmed milk powder. But here's where it gets interesting. When you turn milk into cheese, you don't just get cheese. You also get a watery liquid called whey. It's basically what's left after the solid curd separate. For decades, in India, this whey was considered waste, so it was drained off or used as a cattle feed. The irony is, whey is loaded with protein. With new processing technology, that protein can be filtered and concentrated. Think of it like straining out the water to catch the good stuff. The result is whey protein concentrate. Once you have that base, you can plug it back into everyday foods. Add it to buttermilk, curd or paneer, and suddenly you have got a high protein version of something people already eat. If you blend it into ice creams, kulfis or flavored milk, and the same indulgence doubles up as nutrition. Amul, for instance, generates nearly 3 million liters of whey every day just from its cheese operations. Until recently, that would have gone down the drain. Now it's being transformed into high protein milk, yogurts, paneer, and yes, even protein kulfi. See, the other thread is demand. See, India is badly protein deficient. Studies show that nearly 3 out of 4 Indians consume less protein than they should, averaging only about 0.6 grams per kilo of body weight per day, when the requirement is closer to 0.8 to 1 gram. In simple terms, most adults are falling short by at least 10 to 15 grams of protein a day. And the protein we do eat mostly comes from cereals, which don't give you the complete amino acid profile. But there's also a shift happening. Awareness about protein deficiency has slowly started to become mainstream. FMCG brands talk about it in ads, social media feeds are full of them, and the younger generation like me are beginning to look at protein not just as a supplement but as a part of everyday food. That rising awareness might just be what's driving the surge in demand for protein. Which is why Amul doubling capacity every month isn't just expansion. It's the clearest signal that protein has started slowly entering the Indian grocery basket. See, one of the biggest questions in global finance today is around whether the Trump government shall try and undermine the independence of the United States Federal Reserve. See, a few months ago, this may have seemed like a matter of ideal speculation, but it's becoming an active concern. Trump officials' criticism of the central bank is reaching a fever pitch. There are regular demands from the administration for rate cuts, often accompanying demands for the resignation of various officials. The ugliest of this has been around attempts to oust Lisa Cook, who has sworn in the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors, but has been hounded by administration officials ever since. See, but the problem is that the US executive can't simply interfere with the functioning of the US Fed by creating a public spectacle, or it will be soundly trashed by the markets. It needs more groundwork than that. It has to offer a theory to justify intervention, a case that the markets would be governed better if the US government had more control over the Fed. That work has started. Recently, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent wrote an article cheekily titled The Fed's New Gain of Function Monetary Policy, which lays the foundation for more government intervention. See, the title is an attack in itself. It likens the Fed's policy choices over the last 2 decades to labs in China that allegedly caused the COVID 19 virus to leak out into the open, creating the worldwide pandemic. See, that comparison is clear from the very opening. As we saw during the COVID pandemic, when lab created experiments escape their confines, they can wreak havoc in the real world. Once released, they can't easily be put back into the containment zone. The extraordinary monetary policy tools unleashed after the 2008 financial crisis have similarly transformed the Federal Reserve's policy regime with unpredictable consequences. Now, what is so extraordinary? Bessent points to quantitative easing, which he portrays as the original sin that sent the US economy off the rails. See, quantitative easing at its heart is the way for the government to flood an economy with money with the help of its central bank. How? See, all governments borrow money by issuing bonds. Usually, the amount they can borrow depends on how much appetite investors have for these bonds. But with quantitative easing, central banks themselves create new money and then use it to lap up whatever bonds they can from the market. In essence, they become an unlimited source of demand for those bonds. This is a bottomless pit of money for governments who can suddenly spend a lot more money than they would have otherwise had the ability to. Now, the US Fed had kicked this practice into hyperdrive during the 2008 financial crisis in the face of much criticism as all its other tools of stimulating the economy dried up. Now, that's what Bessent has a problem with. As he says, the Fed extended its liquidity tools into uncharted territory, repurposing asset purchases programs as instruments of stimulative monetary policy. These tools were designed to stimulate the economy through various channels, none of which are well understood. This, Bessent alleges, unleashed a long list of ills. It caused rampant inflation at various points while failing to spur the growth the Fed hoped for. So far, though, this is a policy disagreement, but Bessent then gives it a distinctly political character. As he says, economic models are based on certain beliefs about how the economy works, which may in turn be correlated with various political views. The FOMC has consistently overestimated its own power in stimulating real growth and in controlling inflation. It has overestimated the efficacy of spending-based fiscal policy and underestimated the efficacy of tax cuts and deregulation. In sum, the biases in its model have same political tilt that has plagued most of Washington for decades. We know better than the market. Now that's where this piece turns interesting. It flips the Fed into a political opponent to Trump. If Bessent is to be believed, Trump wants to give more control to businesses while the Fed's opposed to this idea. Its tools, controlling inflation and controlling money supply, are presented as a market-denying alternative, a belief that governments know better than companies. From here, while Bessent criticizes the Fed's policies, from the suppression of market signals to promoting inequality, it reads as the takedown of political opponent, all of which culminates with questions on whether the Fed should be independent at all. The Fed's growing footprint also has profound implications for the political economy, placing its valuable independence in precarious position. By extending its remits into areas traditionally reserved for fiscal authorities, the Fed has blurred the lines between monetary and fiscal policy. Read that carefully and you'll notice how he twists the knife. The way he tells it, the problem isn't that the executive is trying to interfere with the independence of the US Fed at all. It's that the US Fed has been trying to enter the US government's fiscal space. This attempt to overstep its boundaries is to him why the government ought to override the Fed's independence. The Fed's missteps and policy-making arrogance have placed its credibility at risk, jeopardizing its independence on its core responsibility of monetary policy. The Fed alleges that it needs to be independent. But is it? Or is it captive to the ghost of its past and of its own ego? Now, is there some concrete change that Bessent is pushing for? Most immediately, it's this. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency have decades long expertise in examiner led, rules based bank supervision. Day to day safety and soundness exams, consumer protection enforcement, and prompt corrective action powers should reside with those agencies, leaving the Fed to focus on macro prudential surveillance, lender of last resort liquidity, and the traditional tasks of monetary policy. Now, what does that mean in simple words? Well, currently, the Fed performs a lot of oversight over banks and major non banks, as well as other key parts of the American financial system. Those powers, Bessent suggests, should be rolled back and given to entities that are more under the government's control. But that's just the beginning. His wider goal is more comprehensive relook at everything to do with the Fed. It also likely requires an honest, independent, and non-partisan review of the entire institution and all of its activities, including monetary policy, regulatory policy, communication, staffing, and research. See, we can't cover everything he says in detail. We recommend you check out the original. But this marks a major chapter in what could be a long, ugly fight and one of the most consequential of our time. Just last month, Nestle, the global company, hired a new CEO named Philip. But he might have one of the most thankless jobs in the world right now to save one of the world's largest food companies ever. Earlier this week, Philip held an all hands meeting. Right after, he made his first public comment since being CEO. What can each of us do to make Nestle better, smarter, and faster? Together, we are moving fast, open to fresh ideas on how we deliver the future of tasty, healthy, and affordable food. Well, that sounds nice. Maybe a little too nice. What it actually is an attempt to paper over the carnage that the Swiss giant has been going through over the past few years. For one, Nestle is bloated with a lot of debt. The company has borrowed a lot of money to make big acquisitions, particularly in the health and wellness space. This was a strategy led by their ex CEO from 2016 to 2023, Mark Snyder, who succeeded Paul. But most of them either underperformed or downright failed. For instance, they had to write down billions of dollars on their acquisition of peanut allergy treatment company Palforzia. Additionally, huge share buybacks did not help. Bloomberg covered what investors had to say about Nestle, and they have quoted head of research at Air Capital who said bluntly, Nestle has been sleeping not only on the board. Basically, they were sold to the idea of Snyder doing health science with Nestle, and execution was bad. Every company that Nestle bought since Paul was chairman is not bringing results. It doesn't help that lately Nestle has been rocked by a few scandals. For one, it was recently discovered that the French government helped cover up a mineral water scandal whose main perpetrator was Nestle. Last year, researchers found that Nestle deliberately added more sugar to baby formula sold primarily in developing and poor countries so that it sells more. It has been accused of having child labor in its supply chains. Moreover, in the last 2 years, Nestle has been graced by 3 different CEOs, including Philip. Snyder was let go in 2024 because of his failed acquisitions. He was succeeded by Laurent Frixie, who was fired within a year because of a misbehavior with a junior employee. And now Philip, who has more than 2 decades at the company, is taking the helm. Meanwhile, Paul is also stepping down as chairman earlier than scheduled. That's a lot of management instability. Nestle stock has been dangerously tanking and they need to make important decisions really fast. It doesn't have many new sources of growth right now and its brand value has been tanking. And for the most part, it has only itself to blame for where it is. Now, this is an existential crisis for one of the most biggest, most historic food companies in the world. Maybe Nestle needs to, well, take a break. That's it for this episode. If you have any feedback for me, please let me know in the comments below. Political character, which may in turn be correlated with various political views. As he says, which may in turn be correlated. Now that's where it now that's where this piece gets now that's where this piece